Hello, this is Hugo Prévost, and you are listening to Entretiens, journalistiques, a podcast about media and journalism. Today, for episode number 76, we have Endre Szvetnik on the show. Hello.
Hello, Hugo. Bonjour à tous, and welcome, and thank you for the opportunity. I would prefer to continue in English because my French is kind of high school level.
That's quite all right. We do that sometimes with people. English speakers, of course, we switch to English. That's the nice thing, maybe living in Canada, is that you are fluent between the two languages. So we will do it in English today. And today you are the senior editor at Sparrow, a media that is all about science. Could you tell us more about Sparrow?
Yes, correct. So Sparrow is a scientific or science discovery website. It has gone through many iterations. It started as a startup back in around 2015, and it evolved. And basically, the main mission is to bring science closer to the public, to the lay public, to translate science, to democratize access to science through explaining complex scientific research and discoveries, and kind of unlocking what's inside scientific publications that the public either cannot access or cannot understand.
And you just said that it had multiple versions of the media. I think the official launch, the current version, was in last May. How is it going so far?
It's going well so far. So we're kind of very happy that we have found a direction. Indeed, as you said, we have launched the beta product. We launched it at the end of last year. And we are aiming to reach 50,000 freemium subscribers by the end of this year. Currently, we have about 28,000 subscribers and, well, over 77,000 users. It's the people who can actually come to the website and read the content there.
We will talk about the business model in a few minutes, if you're okay with that. But just before we go on, like I said, you are the senior editor. What does that do exactly?
So basically, I look after the content. I decide on the content calendar, and then I liaise with scientists and researchers and commission them to write stories. What happens is I find a topic, and then I consult them, ask them whether they can find a relevant research paper, or indeed there is a research paper that has just been published, and they can help explain it, and through that the background to the wider story or the sort of wider topic. And there's a lot of to and froing. My job is to nudge them to kind of write in a way that lay people can understand. This is sometimes it's a challenging task because researchers have their own lingo, their own argot, and they like to speak and communicate that way. And sometimes they don't even realize that us ordinary people don't understand everything that they say. So there's a lot of that involved.
And I think that's really, really interesting what you just said, because when you talk about science, like you said, there are scientists who do their studies, they do their work, and when it's time to communicate the results of those studies, like you said, it can be really hard to understand because you have to know the background of that specific science. You have to understand how research papers are written, and how many hours do you have to spend on that topic to just be sure that it can be understood? Because maybe that's one of the problems with people and trust in the science is that sometimes for example, if you were to give me a research paper about COVID vaccines, for one example, one very topical example, there's a probably huge probability that I cannot even really understand what it means. And so when it comes to fake news, this is where maybe the trust erodes. So how many do you put maybe a few hours a day on that? Do you have to spend most of the day on that kind of transforming the research paper to make it readable?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we try to tackle this by sort of brainstorming, and basically we came to the conclusion that we are not a traditional medium, so not a news medium, and we tried to dissect this problem into smaller chunks, a little bit like programmers or designers work, and create a process. So I wrote a formula how to write these articles, and together with the product team in my company, we came up with a process to sort of estimate how long it takes. And I would say that for the writer, for the actual researcher who is authoring these articles that we publish, and currently these are our main product, it takes about 2-3 days to write them according to our formula. And then it goes through the process. So it goes to another researcher who does a sort of a peer review, which is part of scientific life and publications. They read the article, they critique it. There's lots of links in the article linking to the evidence, to the research papers that give people a background and credibility to the whole piece of content. And then this reviewer comes back. We call it an integrity checker. So they come back with their comments. These comments go back to the original writer, and they tweak the original manuscript according to these. Then it comes to me. I'm the editor, sort of. I'm the bridge. I'm the link between the lay public and science, and I just try to make sure that it flows and kind of tells the story. It's easy to read. It's got all the necessary elements that we value and we find important. And then we publish it finally. It goes on the website, and it goes out as a newsletter as well to subscribers. So, it's about, let's say, 5 days in total. And
do you feel like, because, and I really want to make this clear for the people who are listening right now, it's always an uphill battle when you fight against misinformation or fake news or just misunderstandings. And like you said, if it takes 5 days, because that's maybe the hardest part of science journalism, is that I can put out a fake news article saying whatever in 5 minutes. And I know you are not specifically working on fact-checking, but if you want to talk about a study that was just published, like you said, it takes 5 days. Do you feel like it's never-ending struggle, maybe, or do you feel more like it works well that way, and it's going to keep working well that way, and that's how you make credible journalism?
Yes, so in our case, this is a little bit different. We sort of removed ourselves from the news cycle, so we're not trying to address whatever comes up in the news, and it kind of gives us a little bit of breathing space, so we can really try to focus on discoveries and topics that are generally interesting to people, and we aim to create more or less evergreen content. Of course, nothing is constant, and the world of science also comes up with discoveries. But generally, in science, things take place at a much slower pace than in the news arena. So that would be the answer. Also, we, through research, found that we have only a few topic areas that we want to target at the moment, because we feel that people are, or our readers are more interested in those. Mm-hmm. So we have sort of narrowed down what we cover. For example, we are not dealing specifically with COVID or COVID vaccines. That was back during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. I understand. And when it comes, for example, to earth sciences, the environment, the climate change, and so on, I know you try to distance yourself from the news cycle, but even when you do that, the studies that are coming out, it's not positive. It's not a good. Usually, it's not good news. Everything is good. Everything is breaking down and catching fire, and so on and so on. Do you feel depressed a bit about this? Do you feel like, because it's still your job to take that science and give it to I don't want to say the masses, but give it to the public? Does it have a toll on you, on your team?
Yes, I mean everyone is touched. We are all humans, and we are human, so you cannot escape it. But we try to, or I personally try to find always some sort of solutions. So what I'm excited about is the fact that there's so many things that can be done. And helping humanity to adapt to the situation. Yes, we have horrible weather and famines and things that affect people and even provoke wars between people and cause migration and all sorts of things that kind of is the modern day upheaval. But also there's for example, news about or discoveries about how to store energy from renewable resources. And I don't know, 50 years ago or 100 years ago, we never would have imagined that we could do certain things. Mm-hmm. So I believe that in the future, probably we'll crack this problem and we'll be able to store, for example, energy in massive batteries and from wind and solar. So I kind of make sure that we try to find solutions about this when we talk about the environment, or about food security, how science can help find plants, or how to optimize agriculture in a way that it can feed the planet.
I see. Before you talked about your number of subscribers currently, and I wanted to ask you about the, let's call it the saturation maybe of the market, because there are publications, scientific publications that are already there, of course, like, well, Scientific American, for example, and many others. In regards to, like you said, the number of subscribers, I think tens of thousands. You talked about 28,000, I think, premium subscribers, and many more that read the content. Do you feel like you found your place in that ecosystem?
It's a little bit hard to reply. Honestly, I'm the editor who's looking after the content. So, that's my primary task and passion. But what I can say is that if I look back to our journey, then definitely there's a really positive change, and obviously our ambition is to grow even further and be able to cover more topics and serve more people and bring interesting and valuable and actionable content to more people.
And what are the steps exactly? Do you have the plan to? I know you are the senior editor, but I'm guessing there's a plan to continue growing. I know you have, for example, you have, of course, the website, the newsletter. There's a podcast if you subscribe. Do you plan to keep adding, let's call them features?
Yes. So this is the domain of our product team. We kind of still feel a little bit like a a startup, and the positive aspect of a startup is the sort of the curiosity, excitement, and the can-do attitude, or the brainstorming that occurs with the startups. People come up with ideas and constantly testing them. So yes, there's a lot we are still exploring and trying to figure out how to improve our distribution, for example, how to use social media to our advantage. There's different demographics, different age groups, and they consume media in a different way. I mean, my daughter is a good example. She's on Instagram, for example, and when I tell her, Grandpa, if you want to talk to her, then join Instagram, and he says, no, I'm on Facebook. And then there's this kind of gap. And I feel that we need to try every avenue.
Mm-hmm. And of course, contrary to, as I mentioned, for example, Scientific American, who started, of course, on the paper form and then moved on. Well, they still have the paper magazine, but they now have a website and so on. Would you like, as an editor, would you have the dream maybe to say that there will be a Sparrow magazine one day, or a Sparrow yearly review or something like that in paper form?
Hugo, thanks for the idea. That sounds great. I mean, I love National Geographic and publications like that. I sort of love the visual representation of things, and very often like a nice infographic or an article with nice pictures and images and illustrations can really enhance it. So definitely, I would say personally, I would dream of this, and I've seen examples of this in the news media. When I come from Hungary, so back in Hungary, there's a publication, a political publication that started out as I believe a blog, and then it turned into a news portal, and now there's a magazine that you can find on the newsstands. And yes, I would love to sit down on a Sunday and flick through this Sparrow magazine.
Endre Szvetnik, the senior editor for Sparrow, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you, Hugo. It's been a privilege and a fun time to talk to you.
Thank you again. And thank you, of course, to our listeners right now. You can catch up on previous episodes on piev.ca. We're also on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcast, and our host, Balado Québec. And this has been Hugo Prévost, and I'm telling you thank you, and until next time.